Hello, my name is Ellie. I'm one of the co-founders of the company of the Golden Dragon, and today I'm going to be talking you through creating a level 5 character sheet for you to play D&D with. First of all, I'm going to talk you through what you need. We'll be using 5e D&D rules, but a lot of our one-shots and a lot of our D&D games that we do play are homebrew. We just use the ruling set from 5e. I'm going to be using a basic character sheet. This is just one I've got from Google, and I will just be using this today on my iPad, but I'll be writing on it as paper, the same as you would if you were playing at home. We'll also need the Player's Handbook, the D&D Player's Handbook for the 5e edition. This has so much information about character creation and different races, different classes that you could use. If you want something a little less mainstream, you can absolutely do that. D&D Beyond is a fantastic resource. It has a bit more information for you, but I'm going to be sticking to the basics today for the character creation, just to show you the base of what people would expect to make. Then last but most certainly not least, you will need dice. Now behind me I have a wide selection of dice. I just dropped one. My cat will get that if I'm not careful. I have 4 sets of dice I use on a regular basis, and I have one fancy set that has like a liquid in it, but I don't think the weighting's right, so I don't use that to roll. But you will need your dice to make these rolls, and I will also show you the way that you can make your character sheet with calculations rather than using dice. First things first, I'm going to show you the different sets of dice, the different sided dice, and what you would use each of them for, so what you would expect to be using them for. We have the D4s. These are a triangular dice, and each of the points is a number. So 1 to 4, of course. These dice are what you tend to use for healing spells and low level damage. So these are quite helpful. Also, if you have a dice of inspiration, you'll be using these as well. But they are quite often ones that you will be instructed to use when you're playing your character. For example, if you have a weapon that is D4, 1d4 plus whatever, this will be what you'll be rolling, and the same with the potions. It will tell you if you need to use a D4. You will often need to use these without being instructed, so they're quite self-explanatory. Next is the D6. You may recognise these dice. These are your bog standard dice that you'll see in almost all of your board games growing up, and 6 sides. Similarly to the D4, you will probably be instructed when you will need to use these. If you have a weapon that is 1d6 or 2d6, it will say it with the weapon on your character sheet that you will write out. So it's pretty self-explanatory when and where you'll be using these dice. The next dice are D8s. Now the D8s are an 8-sided dice. It's like 2d4s stuck together. And these are often used again for weaponry. You will again most likely be told when and where you're going to be using these. When you're doing your character creation as well, as you'll see in a little bit, when you're working out your hit dice, you may be using these depending on the class and race that you are choosing to be. The next dice is the D10. Now I do like a D10. They're in a very interesting shape, and you'll be using these as a lot of the time hit dice. So if you're attacking, quite often when you get to the higher levels, you'll be using D10s and D12s, and you may also use this to roll your HP, your hit points, depending on the race and character that you're trying to create. Next are your D12s. Now at level 5, you probably won't really be using these dice very much. They tend to be dice that you use for attacks later in the game when you start to level up and get those big boy attacks to take out really intense big bads. You probably won't be using these today. Again, when you get to the high levels, you may use them for HP and things like that. But to be honest, at level 5, you're most likely not going to be using your D12s, but you will need them when you progress in your game and level up and start getting those hard-hitting spells and attacks. Going a little bit out of order, the next dice I'm going to show you are the D100s. They basically look like your D10, but they go from up in figures of 10. Now, what you'll probably use these for is for percentages. You're probably not going to use these as a level 5. The D100s are not overly commonly used, but they often come in the dice sets, and you may come into situations where you need them. If that is the case, it'll probably tell you to, or you will say for you to do so, or it'll be your dungeon master who is using these. Now finally, the most important dice that you will have, the D20s. Now when you think of Dungeons and Dragons, these will be the dice that you will think of. The beautiful 20-sided dice, and of course the dreaded nat 1 on the bottom and the coveted nat 20 on the top. These are what you will roll the majority of the time. These dice are what determine whether you hit when you're trying to attack. These dice will determine how well you are doing in the game when you're rolling to perceive something, when you're rolling to advance the story. This is what controls the narrative. This is what controls how well your character is doing. I quite often at the start of a game will take my 4 dice, my trusty dice, I will roll them all, and I will pick the one that scored the highest, and that will be my trusted dice for that game. You may also see quite often people will have dice jails. If their D20 is being naughty, tends to go in there. These are lovely dice and will be the most important dice in your game that you will need. Okay, now let's have a look at the character sheet. So I'm going to get it up on my iPad, and then I will switch to that control so you can see exactly what I can see, and we'll start to fill out our character sheet together.